Well, hello everybody. This is our monthly video blog for Mind Matters. And I was reflecting this week about just the name of this blog is called Mind Matters. And it's a little bit of a pun on words in that, matters of the mind. We talk about all kinds of matters of the mind, whether it's stress or dealing with the pandemic or lots of different topics. But it also, when you think about it, mind matters. That mind, in the three principles, is the foundational principle of the three principles. And mind is the universal energy and intelligence of all things. And all of us can lose our mind at times. That's saying, oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. And I have that experience from time to time as well. And as a matter of fact, just a week or so ago, I was starting to really get affected by all of the colliding catastrophes and tragedies and challenges that we hear on the news every day and are faced with, whether it's the George Floyd story and the triggering of all the social unrest and protests and all the changes that are happening in our whole way of policing, or the pandemic, which is ever present. It affects every aspect of our lives, from our livelihood to how we parent our kids, our personal relationships, our freedom to move about and to do the things that we normally do. And at some point, I kind of had a blind spot or a breaking point or just a low mood. And I woke up and I just felt so low. I could just feel the collective angst. And I was caught up in the collective angst. In that moment, I had lost my connection to mind, really. That's really what happened. In that moment, I was a prisoner of my thoughts. I was just wrapped up in, this isn't fair, and we don't have any leadership, and, we can't get united on this. If we all can't get on the same page, what are we going to do? And just anger, frustration, fear, anxiety were looming in my mind. Lucky for me, and lucky for a lot of you, that we have a compass. When we're lost, when we are starting to lose connection to mind, we have a way back. And that's in that beautiful principle of consciousness or awareness, that we can wake up from the daymare of our thinking in the moment, and we are reminded. That's another nice little pun on words. We're reminded, we're reconnected to mind. And when we're reconnected to mind, when I got reconnected to mind the other morning after having this cyclone of thought, I felt so relieved. That was the first feeling, just, oh yeah. I often call this flat forehead therapy, because I'm always going, oh, it's so simple. How do I forget this? How is it that I, who've written books about this and teach this every day and work with clients, and how is it? Because thought is so tricky. It's such a great hologram. It's such a great hallucination that it appears as reality. Now, I'm not saying that the pandemic and George Floyd's murder and all of these things that are going on in our world aren't happening. But in my experience, when I'm reminded where my experience is coming from, and that I'm connected to this universal life force and intelligence that is my resilience, it is my mental health, and it allows me to be in the world that I'm in, and I'm very involved in the world, but I'm not of it. It's not in control of my mind. I am the master of the ship, in a sense. And like a good ship captain, knowing how to sail in all kinds of conditions and storms and unexpected doldrums and things that happen, we a good captain knows how to re-navigate, reset the sails, wait it out. And so the understanding of these simple three principles is our compass, it's our rudder, it's our guidance system to reconnect us to this essence of who we are already, which is universal mind, this divine true self that we all are. And so I want another thing that happened that was another wake up for me was a couple weeks ago. I spoke at the annual London conference on the three principles. And after the conference, I couldn't listen to all the talks because there's many talks going on at the same time. I happened to listen to Jacqueline Hollows, who's been running a program called Beyond Recovery in the United Kingdom, in London, and many different prisons. And she had 5 of her counselors who were former inmates, former drug addicts, former criminals, who are now counselors, who are now working with other inmates, helping them to recover their mind, their health, their resilience. And there's something about hearing from people who aren't psychologists, who don't have all the fancy language, or who haven't been involved in the three principles for 30, 40 years like I have, who talk from the heart and are just so fresh. And one of the gentlemen, Derek, who will actually be speaking at our conference that we're going to be having in September, I'll talk more about that a little later, and several of the others will be speaking at our conference, struck me so deeply because Jacqueline said, "What? Just talk about whatever comes to your mind. You don't have to think about it." And so he said, I know what I want to talk about. I want to talk about blind spots. He said, I didn't realize I still had blind spots until George Floyd was murdered. And I went into all the old feelings that I would have done. I would have been out there rioting in the streets. I would have been breaking windows. I would have been so angry. And I would want every white person to feel my rage so they could feel as bad as I was feeling. And all of a sudden, he said, I realized, oh my God, I am not what I would like them to be towards me. I am being what they are towards me. And shortly after that, someone asked him the question, if you were the counselor, if the murderer of George Floyd was in your prison that you work in, and you were assigned him to work with as his counselor, how would you work with him? And it really stopped me, he said, and I realized, oh my God, I've never thought about what's in the mind of a racist. How are they thinking that they can do what they do? And as I reflected on it, and as I could put myself in his shoes in a way, I felt compassion. And I reawakened that love and that compassion in me that I want to see in him and in others in the world. And that seminar was probably the most powerful one at the entire conference. It really blew people away because what he and the others spoke of was really the cure of racism. It was really the cure for mental illness and addiction and all these things. And the simplicity of his words, though, really reminded me again of the simplicity of this. But also, even though I can get caught up in my little whirlwind and feel like I'm losing my mind, I know how to go back home. I know the path back. And that's what you all have, is that ability to go back home. And we all do it all the time, even without knowing the principles. We have a moment where our mind gets distracted and whatever we're worrying about or thinking about or preoccupied with disappears, and that feeling comes back to the surface. So when we're reminded of mind, when we see that all that really matters is that we're aware of our connection to mind, it allows us to listen better. It allows us to have more innovative, creative thinking. and most importantly, it gives us peace of mind. So thank you for listening. I'll see you next month. I do want to say a few words. We have still decided to go forward with the 3 Principles of Addiction and Recovery conference that we had to postpone because of COVID-19, but it will all be virtual. The university is still going to be not open for large groups, so we will do it virtually, and as a result, we'll be reducing the price to make it more available for a lot more people. So you'll be hearing more about that on my website as the details emerge. So thank you again for being a part of Mind Matters, and I'll see you next month.